Let's continue the dialogue right here. To do so, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, Skyping in tonight from Arizona. Also joining us via Skype from New Jersey, Bernard Kerik. Bernie, the former commissioner of the NYPD. He also served as the interim interior minister of Iraq, and he's the author of the book From Jailer to Jailed. Gentlemen, we thank you both for your time here on Newsmax Prime. And gentlemen, as Miranda mentioned, Donald Trump went on CNN earlier today and doubled down on his comments. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I have no doubt that we have no choice but to do exactly what I said until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on, because we have a problem in this country.
Zuhdi, you hear those words. I want to get your reaction to those, and in addition to the reaction, a little bit about the reformation you and other Muslims are trying to bring about.
Well, JD, thanks for having me. And listen, we realize we have a problem. And just as when Dr. Carson opened the issue about can a Muslim be president, there is a deep inconsistency with Islamism and American law. But Muslims are the solution. Muslims are part of the fabric that believe in our first freedom, which is religious liberty. So ultimately, my first reaction to Mr. Trump's comments is, sort of there he goes again. But the bottom line is that this is surrender. He is actually taking the core identity of Americanism, which is religious freedom, which is the main antidote to Islamo-patriotism of ISIS, of Saudi Arabia, of Iran, of the Muslim Brotherhood, and saying, you know what? We shut that down. We're going to surrender, and we're going to allow you to have the narrative of Islam. And JD, the bottom line is there's no difference between Hillary's approach, which is to say Islam is a monolith. There's no diversity. She's going to take the talking points from the Qatar Foundation and the Brotherhood, versus Trump's approach, which is that ultimately we are a monolith. That's all a threat. And there's no diversity and there's no solution within the House of Islam that we need to have as part of a strategy. So he's deflecting any type of strategy.
Bernie, I'd like to get your reaction to what Donald Trump had to say and what Zuhdi Jasser just had to say.
Well, listen, JD, you're talking to somebody that has numerous Muslim friends, from the King of Jordan and his family. And I will tell you, the King of Jordan despises the radical Islamic movement in the world today, despises and does everything in his power to fight against it. So that being said, I've got a lot of Muslim friends. I understand what Trump's saying and why he's saying it. I think there's a bigger issue here, and I think that's why you're hearing this outcry in Congress on both sides of the aisle, and that is, what are you doing about it? Why isn't this administration and members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, why aren't you stopping the wrong people from coming into this country? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to stop the wrong people from getting in? What about that vetting process on refugees? You had this, what's her name, Malik, the woman in California, she had a K-1 visa. She's investigated by everyone under the sun, and it turns out she was completely radical and walks into a place and massacres 31 people, killing 14. You know what? If she can get in through this vetting process that we presently have, how are you going to bring in tens of thousands of refugees to ensure they're not coming in to harm the citizens of this country? I think that's the bigger issue here.
And the sad fact is, Bernie, as you alluded to, this administration does a lot of talking, very little action. And the inertia supplanted by words from Press Secretary Josh Earnest at a press briefing earlier today. He spent a lot of time talking about Trump and Trump's comments. Here's what the presidential press secretary had to say.
The first thing a president does when he or she takes the oath of office is to swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the fact is that what Donald Trump said yesterday disqualifies him from serving as president. And for Republican candidates for president to stand by their pledge to support Mr. Trump, that in and of itself is disqualifying.
Well, Zuhdi, there you hear, again, a lecture from this White House in the person of the presidential press secretary. But there have been other candidates talking about a moratorium on all immigration. In your mind, do we need some sort of timeout to get in control of immigration in the United States?
Absolutely. The timeout is for all immigration because, by the way, strategically, it's not just Muslims that are the problem. You have two enemies in Syria. One is the Assadists, who are Muslim mostly, but there's also many operatives of the Ba'ath regime, which are working with Russia, working with Iran. We just had somebody sanctioned who was a non-Muslim by the U.S. Treasury for funneling and paying for oil from Syria. So it really is strategically wrong, but ultimately somebody who's trying to be commander-in-chief needs to lead and educate America, not just pander. And it's bizarre that we're not hearing, we just rolled out this Muslim reform movement, 20 organizations that put together a charter, a declaration of 2 pages of principles that we could give to Homeland Security, media, academia, and say, here's a litmus test. If Muslims sign on to this, that they believe in the separation of mosque and state, they want to end the caliphate, they want to end all violent jihad, they believe in the equality of men and women, etc., lists that would then allow us to vet who is Islamist, just like we did in the Cold War. Immigration papers said, are you a member of the Communist Party? Today, there is no vetting for Islamopatriots versus those who believe in freedom and liberty. That's the conversation are those who are testing to be liberty, to be leaders of our community should be having, not just simply pandering to either side.
Bernie Kerik, Claire Lopez was on this program last night. Obviously, her expertise is in the area of intelligence. And here's what she had to say about the term being used, radicalization, and how it's being employed to describe the 2 terrorists in San Bernardino. Let's listen to this.
This is not some instantaneous or quick conversion to some, point of departure from which they launched this attack. They were born and raised in a milieu that inculcated in them the devotion to Islam that in its most devout forms leads to jihad, which is where they wound up.
Bernie, you've been involved in dealing with crime and dealing with what was going on the ground in Iraq. This notion that using the term radicalization, it seems some are using it to try and excuse the behavior of the terrorists. Should we abolish the term radicalization from our vocabulary?
You know what? I don't know if we should, JD, because then you lump all Muslims into one category, and I think that's wrong. There are moderate Muslims in the world. There are law-abiding American Muslims in the world, in this country. To eliminate that, then you classify every Muslim as problematic, and I don't think we should be doing that.
Well, Zuhdi, obviously, you know whereof you speak, and you've been dealing with this problem for a long time. What is there a better term to use? You're working on reformation, but all the talk is about radicalization. We got about
absolutely.
a minute.
Yeah, I think bottom line is we should change what the media and others are talking about today as radicalization is what I call operationalization, where a nonviolent jihadi becomes a militant jihadi that wants to do something violent. He starts getting weapons. He separates out of society. That's operationalization of a radical jihadi. The radicalization is the adherence to the political doctrine, the global supremacy of the Islamic State belief, be it the Caliphate, be it the Saudi Wahhabis, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Khomeinis. Those are all part of the radicalization process. CARE, ISNA are all part of the radicalization process. The last step is operationalization, which is only Homeland Security can do. We Muslims need to fix the first years of radicalization.
Fair enough. Zuhdi Jasser, we thank you for your perspective. Bernie Kerik, likewise, sir. And we'll talk to you again soon. You heard their comments. Agree or disagree? Send me those comments at newsmaxtv.com/comments.